Hey now, welcome to the dirty side of the track, America's leading Formula One podcast. I'm Brian, that's Rob. Today was the Dutch GP. It was a banger, in my opinion. I look forward to discussing it with you, Rob.
Do you know what? Even if it hadn't have been, I think I would have just watched one car drive round track for 2 hours because I've been so starved of F1 action that it would have had to have been an absolute hungry fest to have disappointed me today. So, and it wasn't. I enjoyed it. I got a couple of little Rob's rants to go on, but
Oh boy.
and not DRS related either. But
Really? Because when I was putting my notes together and like in the middle section, I actually took a DRS comment, but we'll get there. We'll get there.
yeah. I mean, you know my feelings on DRS, so it didn't go beyond my normal level in order to induce a Rob's rant. My Rob's rant is retained for something else, but we'll get there when we get to race review. We've got news and social first. You found some videos from the video vault. Talk about race. Listen to Paul and do a preview of Monza because we're back to back.
Yeah,
Look at that.
Monza.
You don't have a race for a month and two come along like British buses. Uh,
Or any bus, basically.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's British buses is where the saying came from. You guys just stole it like
Yeah.
everything else.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Okay. Let's dive into news and social then. So, little bit of driver news. Haas came out and announced they are retaining both drivers for 2024. So, the chances of silly season even getting remotely silly are really falling away rapidly. I saw you found something about Zhou.
Yeah. So, I mean, it basically leaves just confirming Yuki, seeing what happens. Is Checo retained at Red Bull, and is Daniel going to be also with Yuki? But then the only other seat is Joe's. And most people would agree he's having a pretty good year. He actually had a really good race today until the end when literally he had no control of the car, steering and braking to no avail. But there are still rumors that he could lose a seat, and whether it's the budget he can bring to the team or the team itself looking at Théo Pourchaire, who knows? But it is still up in the air, and it's not confirmed. So I guess we got to keep our eyes there. However, I'll do this the second time in a couple months. Somebody predicted a very quiet, silly season. It was me. And so far, I'm
I
getting this
think
right.
it was most of the internet, to be fair.
Yeah, everyone jumped on my coattails. I mean, let's just
Oh
be
yeah,
quite
okay,
frank.
of course, of course. I read this Joe one as just being the act of desperate media to try to whip up something around a driver's seat for next year.
I
It's
agree.
all
He
the
would be.
noises seem to be that it was going to be like he's been so comfortable about it, and there was rumors it was all going to be tied up by the end of the break, and everyone's been kind of chilled over it there. So
I
I don't
mean,
know.
Valtteri is we've seen what Valtteri can do. He's a great driver. Joe is matching him at times in a car
Yeah,
that's not good.
and
So I
the
mean,
car
I
sucks.
that's what I'm trying to figure out. Like, what would you expect him to be doing?
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't expect any of the drivers to be doing would be to be going to jail for speeding. But if we want to listen to some of the clickbaity articles that are out there, Max is going to need to escape jail to drive in this week's Dutch GP. So I don't know. Feels like this one's got more airtime than it's worth. He was driving an Aston Martin Valkyrie. Is that how you say it? Yeah, we'll go with
Yep,
that.
yep.
And he was driving it a decent amount over the speed limit. He was also driving it one-handed while he was using the touchscreen. He was also wearing headphones, which apparently comes with the Aston Martin in order to avoid eardrum damage from the loud engine, but it's actually they're illegal to use on the roads. So he's got three possible felonies there. Are we going to file this one under nothing burger?
We are. I do, however, have a related story. I've looked into the price sheet of the Aston Martin Valkyrie, and it's like a $2 million hypercar. However, if you want the headphones, it's an extra $10. I'm kidding. But that's what they do with these kinds of cars. Like, everything is such an extra. Like, oh yeah, $2 million just gets you the price of admission. But yeah, it may be. If that turns into a story, I'll record a podcast naked. Moving on.
I don't want to see that, and I don't want to edit it and put it on YouTube so no one else will see it. So let's come up with a better forfeit than that. But oh my gosh!
So, speaking of some upgrades that were coming along, we are getting to the point of the season, for everyone's benefit, when teams kind of stop the upgrade flow or run a little dry. It's rare to see a lot of upgrades the last 5 or 6, 7 races. And so as we're getting towards that time when people are focusing on next year, Williams have announced they're now done with upgrades to this car and will focus to next year. And they obviously have Pat Fry coming over as their chief technical officer, a role they hadn't had filled for quite some time. Mercedes and McLaren and Aston Martin had upgrades this weekend. And my favorite line there is, nothing new as expected from Ferrari.
They weren't talking about upgrades in that statement. That
No,
was just
tire
nothing
readiness, overall prep, clown acts. It's bad. We'll get into it. And then the last thing I had for the news this was a non-F1 story, but it happened yesterday. Recording this on Sunday, obviously after Dutch GP, and on Saturday at a NASCAR race, Ryan Preece flipped 10 times. And I don't know if did you see this, Rob, by any chance? Did you
No,
catch
I
this?
didn't.
Okay, it was bad.
NASCAR doesn't really figure on my radar, but having a car flip 10 times sounds bad regardless of what
I
series
can't
it's
explain how bad it actually was. Like, he started off and then was on, like, sort of on his side, and the wheels caught, and he was going so fast that the flips were so violent over and over and over again. And I don't think I can explain how many flips, 10 full rotations of a car in the air actually. I mean, it was horrible to watch this. And our friend Molly, formerly of Tech Heads, now on a new effort with Dr. Obbs, also our friend, had some great kind of insights into this on her Twitter at MollyM_O. You should follow her if you don't. But the video of that was startling. It was one of those where it takes your breath away. You don't see those often in any motorsport anymore. And you watch, you're like, oh my God. And he got out, was okay.
I was going to say, was he okay?
Yeah, okay. So, I mean, you love seeing safety come into these cars, but some of the safety features didn't deploy appropriately and accordingly. Could have saved him some time in the air.
Well, might have only done 8 flips rather than 10.
Or maybe like 2, hopefully. But anyway, should we move to the video vault?
Yeah, open that baby up.
Here we go. Lee, thanks again for this. All right, the door is open. I have 4 good ones this week. First of all, we'll start with Beat the Challenge with Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz. It's the second episode of this on the Shell channel. If you don't subscribe to the Shell channel, you should. It's just a big propaganda channel for their gas, fuel, petrol, whatever you want to call it. Interestingly, it's 5 minutes long. It's worth a watch. Matty P1 is the host of these particular ones. The second time he's hosted one of these. It's fun. But watching these things, you really can see why Carlos is such a good teammate. Just the way he encourages Charles and like gets really excited, starts yelling a little bit, and then goes, "What did it help that I was yelling? Probably not, right?" Like he's laughing and he's funny, and man, I don't know who can't like Carlos as a guy. I don't know. We could argue about his driving, but anyhow. A couple from the F1 channel, so I didn't search too far for these. Name 2 Drivers Challenge. It's the 4th installment of the Grill the Grid feature. It's 12 minutes long. I thought this was so worth it. I really liked it. I'm a sucker for these, though. Like these, softballs down the middle from the F1 Grill the Grids. These are great. Like I said, 12 minutes. It is easy at home. And when the question is posed and you don't have cameras on you and you're, not on the spot, and you're sitting comfortably on your couch, I'm sitting here yelling answers. What about this? What about that? And I feel like a genius realizing I'm not. Did you see this one, Rob?
No, I mean, this week, these past 7 days, I have spent over 30 hours in my car driving my son to college, not far away from you, which it was a shame we couldn't get to catch up. It was literally drive 2 days, drop him off, move him in, drive 2 days back again. So I did a lot of podcast listening, not video watching. So
Got it. Well, I'll hit the last 2 for you then and make sure you're prepared. There was an Alonso versus Hamilton 11 minutes straight. That's the title of it on the F1 channel. And surprise, it's 11 minutes long. It's actually 10:59 if we're being specific. It is also really good. And I'm watching this, and there were races from, the past when they were teammates and then when they were rivals from, 07 onwards. And you're watching these things like, wow, these are some great battles these guys have had over the years. But I feel like I missed it and like I blinked somewhere in those 10 minutes and 59 seconds, but they did not have the Spa kerfuffle from last year when Lewis kind of closed the door on Fernando accidentally and then went up in the air and had a water leak and had to pull over, and Fernando called him an idiot. If I remember right, this was his exact quote on the team radio. So, that wasn't on there. I would have loved to have seen it. Maybe it was, and I just missed it. But, again, a good one.
I doubt it. You've got a sucker for details on this, so I think they omitted it, and you should write a letter to them.
Dear YouTube F1 channel. And then the last one is from Virgin Radio in the UK. The McLaren F1 team, Lando Norris versus Oscar Piastri versus Zach Brown. It's 14 minutes. You got to want this one. It ain't that great. Chris Evans is the host. I'm not a big Chris Evans fan, but apparently he's got some stuff going on in his life now, so I'm not going to go all in on ragging on him. There's only one note here. Zach, as they're playing this game, He goes, I'm dominating, kind of like Alonso on Stroll. You had to see Lando's
Ooh.
face. Lando's face went from basically, kind of like bored playing the game to, I mean, it was so good. It's like 11 minutes in. So if you want to check that out, Virgin Radio UK on YouTube. And then there were a few other ones. McLaren had a portrait painting game. AlphaTauri had a heads-up game. Alpine had some more PR content. But I will leave all those to you. And we will close the video vault because I thought this weekend was great. So closing it up. All right, Rob, take us into the weekend, buddy.
Okay, so practice. Normally we skim over these because there really isn't a lot going on. But today today's Grand Prix was actually impacted a lot by the events of practice. So my first kind of highlight I took was FP1, and it just tickled me because Hulk hit the wall, and the commentators say, "Oh, he's looked like he's escaped with major damage there. There's just a little bit of damage to the nose of the car." And then Gunther came on. They were talking to him. Now, this was one of the new wings that they were putting on, one of the upgrades, and they didn't have many of them. And while he was very diplomatic in the way that he said that, I would imagine there was a lot of F-bomb dropping when he got back into the garage. It didn't sound like there was a lot of these new front wings. And if anything on that car was going to get broken, please don't break the front wing. So that just kind of just tickled me.
I missed that part.
Then we had a bit which I laughed at first, which then later turned into not really being that funny, which was that so Piastri came around the corner, lost control, ended up in the wall.
On the banked turn 3.
On the bank
right.
turn,
Yep.
yeah. And then Danny Rick followed suit coming right round and saw Oscar in his way, so took evasive action and basically drove his car head on into the wall as well. And the BBC website, when I was kind of like tracking the updates on there, kind of had double Dutch down under, which I'm a fan of alliteration and puns and plays on words, and I thought that was fantastic. Then it kind of transpired that it was a little bit more serious for Danny Rick.
Yeah.
He was complaining about his hand. He went off to hospital to have an X-ray, and confirmed broken bone. Now, before we go on to mention, obviously everyone knows if they saw the race who came in to drive for him, there was a fantastic little Instagram back and forth between David Coulthard and Christian Horner. Did you see this, Brian?
I did not.
Okay, so David Coulthard put in an application as to why he should be the driver to replace Danny Rick this weekend, and it was like a PowerPoint presentation. It was made out to be, but this second slide, the first slide was my application to drive, or why I should drive for Red Bull this weekend, and the second slide said something like, "I'm fast. I'll be the 7th oldest driver in the grid. I know the team really well," something like that. Horner came back. Fair play to him because a lot of people hate on him, but it was brilliant. He basically came back and just was very kind of savage and went, "Well, you have caused a lot of crash damage in your career," and basically just kind of just dismissed his application and said, "Application rejected." Why don't you tell us who actually replaced him when the fun stopped and we got down to the real business? What was the announcement?
I probably would, if I were Horner, I probably would have made some comment about the W series and all the money he's owed. But anyway, sorry, too soon. And so it was Liam Lawson who came in to replace him. And the interesting part there is the team has now used 4 drivers, which is the most they can use, because they had Nick replaced by Danny, replaced by Liam, and of course Yuki and the others. So if someone can't go again for any reason, like let's say Liam got hurt, they'd have to basically go back to Nick.
Yeah, I think they would. Or race with one car, which, why would you do that? So
I may have that slightly wrong on the regs, but I read a lot of articles about it, and I think I'm pretty close. But yeah, Liam Lawson popped in for him.
Yeah, and that meant he literally had FP3 to get to grips with the car, which was wet, which means he got no running in the dry at all. But the weather this weekend, whether it was dark clouds rumbling in off the seas, whether it was the wind changing direction faster than I've ever seen in my life before. You've got people like their coats are blowing one way, then suddenly it's blowing the other way. And so quali was wet. Alex topped it. I mean, I think, was it Lee on the Discord that said he was taking a screenshot of Williams 1 and 2 at one point because it wasn't going to last, or was that might have been later in qualifying actually? But Alex and Logan through, unsurprisingly, Lawson and Bottas and Zhou. Alpha is just...
Yeah, that's why I don't think you can... I mean, Zhou did really well in the race before he lost. I mean, I don't think you can take him out of that seat. I mean, I just don't. I mean, I don't know. And then we lost Esteban and K-Mag too, and then we go to Q2, wet but drying, and Karun kept complaining about when the crossovers, slicks now, and then what about now? And I'm like, easy, man, we know you want to go to slicks, no one's ready yet, apparently. But so then Max was fastest, normal service was resumed in Q2, but Logan made it to
Yeah.
Q3. And so we'll get into some of the stats around this, but one for Williams, they had 2 cars into Q3 for the first time since, and I tried to grab this off the telecast, since Monza 2017 with Lance and Felipe, I think. I may be off a little bit, like I was going quickly and I didn't want to stop because the quality was so good, so I didn't go back, but I'm pretty sure I got that right. And we lost.
Yeah, and like you say, because of I was gonna say because of the drying track, it meant the later you went out, the better it was gonna be, and it just looked like Mercedes screwed it or Hamilton screwed it. Whoever's call it was, Hamilton went out on a hot lap too soon, was in somewhere in the midfield, I think, and looked kind of fairly secure until you saw the times. Kept a tumbling as everybody went out after him, and we lost. Like you say, Stroll, Hamilton, Gasly, Tsunoda, and Hulkenberg all mistimed it, I'd say.
Plus, Hamilton was impeded by just about everybody. Did you see the one part where he was impeded by Fernando and it wasn't a big deal, but it happened and they noted it? And then a new one popped up and impeded by Stroll, and they were trying to determine, well, did they just make a mistake? Or was it both Aston Martins? No, it was both. But again, they weren't that big. And then Q3, we went to the dry. And, oh boy, obviously Max is Max. He took this thing to town. But... and then he was followed by Norris, Russell, Albon, Alonso, Sainz, Perez, Piastri, Leclerc, and Sargent. There's a lot, though, to unpack in kind of the Q3 parts. Rob, do you want to hit any of your highlights? Because I got a couple things I want to hit.
I mean, the main thing was just the how cruel this sport can be. So Logan has gone and done his best thing ever and gone and got into Q3, and then absolutely put a stonker of a lap in, and that Williams was like way up on the leaderboard. And then just drove into a wall.
The timing was what got me. I'm sitting here watching this. America. I got flags and eagles, and I'm drinking beer and light beer, and I'm having a good time. And Logan, the sergeant's doing his thing in Q3. I'm like, look at this. We got American Q3. And as they're celebrating... Literally, Crofty is talking about what a great job he's doing, and he's in the wall, and it's him. It's Logan. He crashed as we had them. We had 0 minutes to celebrate. We had 0 seconds to celebrate. Like, you could have timed the celebration, and it was 0.0 seconds. I was so bummed. Like, they showed him, and they're talking about it, and they're showing a replay of him coming across the line, and then they turn to him, he's in the wall.
Yeah. Didn't he lose it on like corner 1 after crossing the line? He just forgot to slow down for his warm down lap.
2, I think, on the way to 3 or something.
Was it 2? Was it
3? It was 2 or 4 or something. It was really soon.
And Charles binned it as well. Yeah, yay Charles, Ferrari! What?
Why was he going in so fast?
Don't know.
That felt like it was all on Charles. I mean, I don't know.
It really did.
It did? You think so? You think this one was the right?
I am stupid.
It did kind of feel like it.
And you feel like you might want to keep that for just Charles and Ferrari for the rest of the weekend going. But at least he found a deck chair and got a little bit of a meme out of it. And he can take Alonso and Charles head-to-head deck chair memes now.
You must have loved that.
I did love it. But
I did too.
I kind of loved it. Once the pain wears off, I'll learn to love it. But
so a couple things that were interesting. Perez obviously finished 7th in quali, was behind Albon, who had a monster. And I know they're not teammates, but they've been in that second seat behind Max. As of now, Perez has only outqualified Albon 7-3 or 7-6. Excuse me, 7-6. It's a one quali, and I know they're not teammates. I understand that, so it's not the greatest stat. But in terms of qualies, Albon's outqualified Perez 6 out of 13 times, or 6 to his 7. He's in a Williams.
He's in a Williams. I know.
Williams.
I meant to write this down, but the delta, as that track's now dry, the delta between Max and Perez. And this will come back when we talk about the race, but oh my God, it's the same car.
I know, it's getting worse.
It's the same car.
So obviously we talked about Hamilton going out in Q2. Logan makes Q3. We talked about the crash, Charles crash. Logan became the first American to qualify in the top 10 for an F1 race since Michael Andretti at the 93 Italian GP. And then Sean Kelly had a little extra stat on that. In that race, Michael Andretti, who qualified 9th, finished on the podium. The thing that I liked, that I think it was Karun pointed out, or it could have been someone else on the broadcast, there were 6 different cars in the top 6.
I know, that was awesome.
I'm here for it. I know Max is driving off into the sunset, and his quality was huge. After that, we had Lando, George, Alex, Fernando, Carlos. That's great.
Yeah, it's awesome. I mean, like we said last week, I think, if you could just... And don't hate on me, Max fans, but if you could just park Max off to the side, we have got such a competitive grid. It's insane.
It is.
But, we'll come back to
and
that.
we can celebrate Max's greatness. We will do that
we
today.
We will when we get to the end of this one. So, Oh, waiting for the race to start. The threat of rain, but it's not going to be wet to start is just brilliant because you know everyone's got to make a mad dash for it and see how long they can go for. Um, I struggled to keep up with what was going on. That okay, so Hamilton, what am I talking about? Max gets away really well, but Alonso is throwing moves everywhere. Like I'm taking you, I'm taking you.
Unbelievable.
It's
He
uh,
created his own line, and by the time he was doing this, it had started raining because he'd done this a couple times. On turn 3, he just kept
yeah.
going low and kept taking 1, 2 people at a time. The battles for 3, 4, 5, and 6 at the beginning of the race, it was just like they were trading. And Albon and Alonso, and you just watch everybody going back and forth, and it just felt like I'm like, all right, this is
This is
some
good.
pretty good stuff going on.
Now, I don't know if this felt the same to you. I'm struggling to remember a race that I've seen snap over to spray before I've even really seen any rain on the TV. Like that first lap
Right.
looked dry. I honestly thought I'd fallen asleep for 2 laps because then all of a sudden there's a camera shot of Max going through spray and spray everywhere. And it's like, it's raining heavily at the back end of the circuit. I don't remember a race that I've seen switch over to that much water so quickly. So now everyone's having to go, well, you can't have all 20 cars dive
Right.
into the pits to
On
get
a
into
very
this.
small pit lane, too.
Yes. And we had a few came in on the very first opportunity. I think I got this down right. I watched the replay afterwards just to try to note it down. Perez, Leclerc, Gasly, Zhou, Sonoda, Lawson, and Magnussen all dived in for Inters, which was a beautiful move by all of them for one team. Let's
One
blame this
team that
the team that
struggled a little
screwed it
bit.
up.
Basically, what they talked about later was Charles was close. He says, "Hey, it's pouring out here. How about we do some inters?" And he pulls into the pit lane, and the team takes a couple seconds, and they effectively came back with this.
We'll come back to you.
And then they're waiting there. He pulls in, and it's the old. Was it Eddie Irvine when he pulled in, also when a Ferrari pulled in, and they had no tires, and Murray Walker's just yelling, "Just throw a tire on the car and get him back out there." Like, that's what this was. Again.
Now, if if he'd gone first and caught the pit lane by surprise, I'd have some sympathy for the Ferrari
Right.
team, right?
But other people
But he
weren't there.
wasn't. Other
No.
people are all milling around, throwing on inters and getting their cars out, and Ferrari
That's
going,
right.
what do you think those guys are doing? Well, there's this stuff coming from the sky that seems to be making the track slippery. We've got these tires over there with these green stripes on, which would be perfect for this. Does anybody want to go and fetch them? Nah, Charles probably won't come in.
Oh, he's here. He's here now? I'm having a pasta.
Yeah, we're waiting for DoorDash to turn up for Leclerc, and then he'll be on his way. So,
Oh.
what was should have been an absolutely inspired move, kind of screwed it up a little bit. But it was insane the difference that one lap
Yes.
made. Again, the delta of just, I think the vast majority that were going to change, and we'll come on to this in a minute, came on. So Max came in, Alonso came in, a couple of others came out. But by lap 3, just because of that one lap difference between Checo and Max, Checo had a 14-second lead on Max. And I'm sitting there going, okay, Checo, they've said you're in the same car and that you should be able to outdo Max in the same machinery. You have a 14-second head start in the rain. Show us what you've got, fella.
I was so excited. And then the curious part, sorry to move off Red Bull for a sec. There were some people who, and I get it, like I understand the gamble. It was no one in a top car. Well, Mercedes kind of hosed up their whole strategy. But aside from Mercedes, most people like Valtteri and some others stayed out. And they said, you know what, if this rain doesn't stay long, I'll just keep the slicks on. And then when other people have to pit again, we'll catch them up again. And that's a great strategy if it works. But if it doesn't and you hang your driver out to dry on slicks in a really wet track, you look a little bit like this. And I'm sitting here leading the Alex Albon fan club, and I'm like, please put on some inters. Bring them in, please. It was bad.
I'm no meteorological expert, but the amount of water that was on that track, and when they were saying that the wets to the inters were something like 6 to 7 seconds per lap worse, the rain isn't going to go away in 3 laps, and within 3 laps you've lost the pit stop. And I think they said that on the commentary a couple of times. There's no point staying out on these because it's not going to dry.
Nope.
And you're not going to get this time back. And
It was wild because here's the last thing on that. On lap 7, just on the rain, on lap 7, Logan was lapped because he was still out on the soft tires. 7 laps of a very short track, he was a lap down already because of that. That's how bad that gamble paid out. And some of the leaders, Lando started second. George started third and Alex started fourth. By lap 10, they were in 11th, 14th, and 15th, respectively. Holy cow, did this jumble things up, and did people hose up the strategy a little bit?
I was going to say, I struggle to remember a race like this where normally it's so follow the leader that once the rain comes down and a couple of drivers say it's too wet, you just get a mass, some teams will double stack, or if they won't double stack, they'll just do it the lap after the next. And literally within 2 laps of it being wet, everyone's on the green stripes, right?
Right.
Like you say, so many people rolled the dice and there were just overtakes going on everywhere because people were just either just too slow, tiptoeing around, other people are flying around on inters. It was insane. But up at the front, we looking at the gap and I'm like, oh God, Checo, what are you doing? Because 14 seconds on lap 3, by lap 11, not many laps later, it's wet. They should all be able to do the similar kind of delta, even if Max is chipping away at it. It's 3.6. He's taken over 10 seconds out of Checo in like 7 laps. And then this is the Rob's rant. This is the bit that makes me angry.
I'm with you. My notes are X-rated or whatever, R-rated. I can't say my particular notes, but you go first, and I'll jump in off the top rope after you.
Max comes in first, and as soon as I see it's Max pulling in, I'm like, they're undercutting Perez. They're undercutting Perez. They
undercutting their leader.
Undercutting the leader. Like, he should get first choice as the leader. That's what every team does.
Not just first in the team, the race leader.
And they pull Max in. And then Perez comes around and pits the next lap, and it's not even close. It's not even like, oh, will he get out before? Will he get out? No, they're already talking about, will he get out in front of Sainz, I think it was, or Alonso. It's like, because they've given up the ghost that Max is going to have gone. But poor old Checo on the radio goes, did they undercut us? And it was the words they. Did they undercut us? You're the same team. And then the radio engineer comes back and says, yes, they undercut us. They. If you want to have a show that a team is divided into 2 different Max versus the rest, that whole call, that whole radio messaging, I didn't like it. However, I've kind of calmed down. Do you want to do your X-rated bit, and then I'll tell you my calm down?
I won't use any of the words I typed in my notes below. I had a real problem with this at the time it happened. I had, Bernie Collins, who's really good, went and did some forensic radio analysis and listened to the messages, and she concurred after the questions that the team told Max to box. And
yes, it wasn't Max's call. Yeah,
that is just. I don't know. Maybe I'm too old. Maybe this is a get off my lawn moment. But when the leader of the team they get preferential strategy. The person leading the team, they should get the choice. The team told Max, who was not leading, to box. Second, Checo wasn't just leading the team, he was leading the race. And so you took the lead from one of your drivers of the race, which is even worse than just taking the position. So I struggled with that, and it reminded me, Lando did this on Oscar. McLaren did this with Lando and Oscar like 4 races ago, maybe Silverstone, I can't remember. And I guess that's why maybe I'm an old man. Maybe it's an unwritten rule that's no longer unwritten, and people just are breaking it. But it feels to me like there's only a handful of teams with a clear number 1 who would really screw the number 2, and it's obviously Red Bull's the leader in that situation. But it feels like Zach's love of Lando would, McLaren might do the same. I struggle with that. Like, again, I thought that was really, and especially because of the Delta. The switch over back to slicks was so powerful and impactful. Like you said, it wasn't even close. Like they didn't even think he'd have a chance to get Max, and he didn't. It was.
I know, but having let everything kind of, so that was definitely my feeling at the time. Having taken a step back, and it's been a few hours since the race now, I'm like, hang on a minute. If I go back to my previous rant of Checo, how the hell do you give up 14-second lead down to almost nothing, pace-wise? Even if they'd brought Perez in first, there would have been a tap on the shoulder in about 2 laps' time saying, let Max by. So why bother? If Checo had proven himself, if he'd kept the Delta respectable, if the 14 had come down to 10, let's say he's lost 4 seconds, but he's still 10 seconds clear of Max, I don't think they make that call. But when he's gobbled that time up so much, I just think they think, well, what's the point? We've got to switch the cars anyway. Let's just do it in the pits.
So I totally understand your realism and the point that you're saying, let's face facts. I agree. I mean, Max is amazing, and he's going to pass Checo. But if you're not going to give the guy leading the race and your lead driver a chance, then just why have him in the seat? Like, I don't know. I'm sorry. I struggle with that. Like, just at some point, just give him Max's used tires. Just save some money. We don't need tires for Checo. He'll use whatever Max doesn't use. Just give him the scraps off the table. Does he need a race engineer? I don't think so. Just let him go out there by himself. It is that. So that's the point to me. They've given up on him.
They have,
that,
and then
I know Max is better. I know Max is going to beat him, and I know they're going to have to make that call later anyway. But this was just felt dirty.
it's the first real indication to me that I really worry about Checo's future in a Red Bull because, yeah, to your point, they've just given up on him. It's like we were talking last week, I think, about was Zach Brown actually right? If you put somebody else in the seat alongside Checo, the rest of the field actually can catch Red Bull. It's not that car is that much more amazing, which it is. It's still the best car in the field, but Max is taking it. His skill is taking it to another level.
Yeah, Max is great, and the car is great, and it works with Max. But
yeah.
All right, last couple. Sorry.
Yeah, go on.
I was going to say we get everybody getting onto the slicks, back onto slick tires, and there were battles everywhere. On lap 15 and 16 or so, 14, 15, 16, somewhere in there, we had Yuki and Esteban. We had Pierre and Carlos back and forth the whole race. Just amazing. Fernando, again, is taking the whole world on the bottom of turn 3. I mean, Fernando, I'm going to talk about him in the cool-down room because I got a couple notes how amazing he really has become. But he just was taking people left and right. I loved this entire race, but especially this first half until Logan hits turn 8. Until that happened, the amount of change, every lap something was happening. People were battling, and there was no DRS because it was wet.
Exactly.
And the overtakes were all over the track at places. How are they finding grip
there was
there?
Some driving around the outside of people that was just insane.
I'm like, there's no way they're holding it.
I probably got this in the wrong place. I think it comes later. I think it's Hamilton. Yeah, it is when it gets wet again. I'll save that. But I just loved some of the overtakes on display. But yeah, like you say, then we saw Logan eating wall again. They showed the onboard. We heard the radio. I don't know what happened. Something broke at the front. And I'm like, oh, is that just a driver's excuse for
figured
binning
it was. I'll be honest.
And I will now publicly apologize to Logan for hearing that because since the race has ended, I think it was only on Twitter a few hours ago. I'm not calling it X, Twitter. Yep. James Vowles came out and confirmed that there was hydraulic pressure loss in the steering. So he was basically a passenger. So gutting for it to happen to him because he was doing well. He'd fought back from his being lapped and he was doing all right. And then boom ski.
So we talked about this over the break. And if you haven't listened to our podcast from the summer break, why not? The question I have is Logan, we talked about him feeling more relaxed, like the time with Alex and Alex being a good, I don't know, big brother or whatever you want to call it to him, a mentor at the team, probably the right way to say it. But watching Logan, just it feels like there's a chance, and especially coming to Monza, where I think that car will do well, Sap's going to predict a points finish for Logan in Monza. Moving on.
Yeah, I mean, actually, just before we do, like James Vowles has said, they said, oh, is Logan under pressure for next year? He's like, no, this is his rookie year. This is his development year where he learns everything he can about the team, the tracks, how we race here. And next year's car is going to be built around Alex and Logan. I thought, fair play for saying that because, you know, he hasn't had the best, but he actually is getting better. I mean, like, yeah, Q3 this weekend is insane. Then we got I was actually expecting in the notes. I was actually playing football at this time, and I caught up with the second half on F1 TV afterwards. I was expecting to come back to the notes and see Brian talking about a lull at this point because when we went to slicks, kind of a lot of the chaos died down, and we kind of got things. Normal service was resumed. We still got some passes going on, but we just had probably 10, 15 laps where not a lot really happened other than Charles and K-Mag going backwards, right?
Well, I would even say Yuki started then after that too. It was I loved it. I'm sitting here watching the storylines. They showed the number of pits. Most people on 2. Some people had 3 stops already. Alex 0. I mean, what is this? Australia 22? And I said that out loud to myself. And then like a couple laps later, Crofty's like, remember? I'm like, I said that already, Crofty. As you said, some great passes on the outside. Hamilton and Albon taking people on the outside of turns. And at this point, the racetrack's probably dry, but I'm betting on the outside lines, it might be wet on the painted areas. So those guys had some serious... And so it just was amazing to watch some of those turns. And then you nailed it, right? Charles was dropping like a rock. Everybody, this is my phrase for the section of the race. Charles dropping like a rock. Lewis, Oscar, Valtteri knocks on the door. And then more people take Charles later. Valtteri eventually takes him. Liam Lawson takes Charles. Liam F. Lawson Incorporated came around on Charles, said, I'll take that position, please, in an Alpha Tauri in his first ever F1 race on a Ferrari. And also sitting here going, there has to be something wrong with this car. And now the announcers are saying the same thing. Like, if you can't see it and it's not detected on a setting, it's got to be floor damage, right? Because you remember when he cut
went
the gravel
off-road.
Right. He said it happened when he bumped tires with Oscar.
Yeah, no
I
way.
don't think so. I think it was his gravel excursion.
Absolutely, 100%.
Okay, good. I thought you would argue with me on that one.
No. It had to be. It had to be like we saw the way that what was it, Silverstone last year when Max got a little bit of an AlphaTauri stuck in his floor.
Yeah.
You anything interfering with the underside of these cars and its massive performance degradation. So yeah, it's when he went rally racing across the gravel that he's
Totally.
messed his floor up there, I think. And essentially they basically retired him. Then didn't it? Was when I can't even
It took a
remember
little
what lap
while.
was.
It took
They
a little
just-
while. Yeah, it's still like 10 more laps till he retired. But while he was still out there, we saw K-Mag dropping like a rock. But he didn't drop far enough for Charles to get him, because at one point in the early 30s, Charles is in 15th. He solidified himself in 15th. He's like, I shall be 15th. And in front of him was two Haas's that he could not catch. And one of them, Magnussen, was falling back at a rate of knots. I have a little problem, and I'm going to ask your opinion on this. Here's a rant from me. Lap 37, they show Logan still sitting in a chair outside turn 8. That's 25 laps later. And he was there. They showed him again a couple more times until like the red flag came out. How long? Like, it's a race, man. This isn't quali. Like, shouldn't he get on one of the scooters and head back to the pits and talk to his mechanics, talk to his 25 laps at least he sat in that deck chair during a race. And like,
Didn't Fernando do the same? Wasn't he up on that hill for the whole rest of the
Fernando
race?
Alonso
what do you reckon?
2 times world champion.
Yeah, I know, but what's
Logan Sargent's never had a point.
Williams are busy making sure that the other car running is. I mean, what's he going to do? Go back to the garage? They're going to do debriefs afterwards. Paul has always said that on the debriefs happen afterwards. So,
but he's. I
didn't have any problem
I'm
with
reading
him sitting
into
there.
it. I'm reading into it. And then Charles did retire. And the last thing I'd highlight from this middle section was then Yuki was dropping like a rock, and this was bad strategy, right? AlphaTauri left him out by the 50s on some old tires, and he basically was too late to pit again, because he pits, he's going to drop down the order. It's like, what can you hold on to? How much defense can you play? Russell took him. Albon took him. I went to the bathroom, came back 60 seconds later. Lando had taken him, and Lewis had taken him. I'm like, Jesus Christ. Yuki was going back fast. And again, that's not on him. That car eats tires, and when they're that dead, he's got nothing to work with. But that was bad strategy from a couple teams, waiting for the next rain or something to happen, and it just didn't work for AlphaTauri.
No, not at all. And then that rain that you talked about, it came. I mean, for ages they seemed to be saying that it was going to be light. That ain't no light rain where I'm from. I mean, it came down biblical style. I mean, some of the drivers were being passed by Noah in his ark. I mean, it was coming down big style. But what just annoys me here, Sergio went off. Everyone was going off. They all looked like they were ice skating on the Inters, but no one boxed. I don't think anybody boxed for the full wets at this point, did they?
Ocon.
Did one? Ocon. Okay. So we had
complaining about it, but he was the only one.
Yeah. And because it's now starting to come into the zone where the blue tyres are coming into their own, and as soon as we get into the zone where the blue tyres are relevant, we red flag the race. But we've gone on about this, that whole sustainability thing. Just stop manufacturing the blue tyres,
and I
don't bring them to races and don't ship them around the world. Because if spray is always going to mean that it's more dangerous to race, I don't want them going out in unsafe conditions. But why bother with the mystical blue tyre?
I'm with you 100% on the usage of the blue tire. However, on this one, I actually feel, even though it took forever, didn't we go VSC and then safety car and then red? I think there was a progression, if I'm right. Here's why I think it actually happened. We saw a bunch of people going off. I think Lewis went off. Checo went off.
Yep.
And then we saw Joe go off and crash pretty hard, right? I mean, he was coming down the straight, applied the brakes, nothing. You could see the wheels stop spinning, and he did not slow down at all. You could see him turn the wheel to the right, like, well, maybe I can still get towards the corner. Nothing. The wheels didn't even turn. Like, he turns the wheel, and he's like, yeah, he's a passenger at this point.
Yeah.
And he goes into the barriers hard. But here's the thing. They cut to the shot, and you see Valtteri basically doing the same thing behind him and getting out of the way and progressing along, and they kept the race going. And I'm thinking, you got to stop the race because someone could go sliding right into Joe.
I agree. What annoys me more is that, there is so much scientific analysis of what's going to happen in the crossover from dries to inters. Everyone can predict that. Karun obviously calls it nice and early that we should all be out on slicks, but no one wants to go to the blues
I'm with
ever.
you. Agreed.
And it's like, it's just a pointless tire. It really is. And then I thought, well, okay, so we get 45 minutes of nothing until the water has gone enough that we're back to inters again. So yet again, poor old Blue really gets no running whatsoever. If you're a tire and you get manufactured and you look at yourself in the mirror and you see you've got a blue stripe, you ain't going racing. Sorry, fella. You're a life that's going to be left unfulfilled as a tire.
Yes. Agreed.
Anyway, so we sat around for 45 minutes. We're back to racing. Oh, I thought Alonso was making a lunge. He seemed to have the tire temperature up quicker, and I thought it was there for a nanosecond.
I did too. And he even joked right in his interview. He's like, I thought about making a move, but I didn't think I'd get out of here alive from all these fans if I went for it. But no, he was right on Max's tail for a while. Like, fair play to Fernando. Like, he didn't get him in that first corner on the restart, but he was definitely close. It was epic again, because now even on inters though, all the spray, I couldn't see a damn thing. They're commentating. The commentators didn't know the difference between half the cars. I had no idea what was happening. It was great. You did see George on Lando racing each other really close, kind of pulling through. And then all of a sudden you see on the screen and the announcers are like, well, George is tumbling down. And I'm sitting here, where's the yellow flag? I'm figuring he's off the track. Turns out he had a puncture from that little move with Lando, made his way around, and then went back out. I thought he'd retired, but he actually went back out and finished. It was wild. It was a wild end. There were a lot of good battles. Everyone was tight because of the restart. I thought it was a great race.
I really did. And we get the order crossing the line is Max, Alonso, Checo, but good old Checo had gone speeding in the pit lane, which who else got one today? Someone else had one.
Oh, there were a bunch. Pierre got one.
And I just don't get it. It's a setting on the steering wheel, and there are sensors, so you're going to get caught. I mean, it just seems a bit of a this isn't going to mean anything to you, but it's the equivalent of taking a foul throw in footy. It's like you should have to get out of the car and do 50 press-ups as a punishment. It's like
I thought the same
schoolboy
thing.
error.
I wrote that in my notes and deleted it.
I thought you did. Yeah. I'd love to see Gasman get his podium. I'd love to see Alonso back up to second after we've been writing them. Well, mainly you've been writing them off so much recently.
I had, and I was right till today.
I know you're 100%. I mean, the upgrades they bought this weekend look like they're doing something. What I'd also point out is, if we say that Checo, and I don't want to beat up on Checo again, but I'm going to have to. Checo in the wet, in the same car, surrendered a 14-second lead to Max, okay, because he was just eating up the time on him. You've got Alonso there, stayed within. Would he lose by 3.8 seconds to Max by the end?
Yeah,
and there was about 7. There was about 6 or but there was only about 6 or 7. So this is what I'm saying. From the moment Checo came out of the pits, he had a 14-second head start, and he lost it within 7 laps. There were 7 laps after the restart, and Max only pulled 3.8 away from Alonso.
It's true.
He's in a different car, which should be much quicker. Alonso's able to hold-ish to 3.8. I know Max isn't probably trying to push and punish the tyres and go for it, but Checo's not done himself any favours this weekend, I'm telling you.
No, and what was interesting to me, you mentioned the Checo difference. Fernando finished second, obviously great, seeing him on the podium doing his little Fernando pump thing that he does when he gets to celebrate. His teammate Lance was 11th. Yeah. I didn't even know Lance was in the race.
No, he went into witness protection, didn't he? He didn't make a tire. He didn't change. Alonso changed early at the beginning and Stroll didn't, and that gamble didn't work.
I mean, 11th. That's again, Lance is not looking great since the first few races. But in the cool-down room, there were a new member to the Max Verstappen podcast joined this week, Pierre Gasly, the guy, and I loved it because Gasly sits down and Max sits down or stands on the right side of the screen, and Fernando just kind of plops down. And they show on the screen some of the moves from the beginning of the race. And Fernando's multiple low, going low on turn 3. And Max turns around and makes like, ooh, good look, nice moves face. And then they start asking questions. Well, what happened to this? What happened to George? And Fernando has all the answers. Like, what happened to Logan? Oh, he went off turn 8, 11th lap. Like, how does he know that?
He's got F1 TV on his steering wheel. I mean, he just watches. I know, he's brilliant.
Are we sure they're not actually piping the race through in his headset in one ear and he's got his engineer in the other? Because he knew everything. And so I watched that and I thought it was awesome.
It was. And they take the podium, Max on the top step, for a record-equaling 9th on the bounce to go level with Seb. And you would probably not. I know I bet against him this week just to try to throw a curveball prediction in there, but I'm not sure you'd bet against him making it 10 next week. So hats off to Max. He drove as he didn't do anything wrong. He did everything he needed to do. It wasn't his call on the pit stop. He made the best of it and fought off Alonso at the end. So you don't win 9 in a row by being lucky.
No, definitely not. He's
a fantastic
an
driver in a great car.
Strategy was key today. A lot of people in the lower positions messed up the strategy and the timing of the tire swaps. I still think Red Bull did something dirty to Checo. You think it's not as bad now. You've let it settle and simmer and you're getting okay with it. I still think they did him dirty. And then you want to hit this one. You love this one.
You mentioned this earlier about AlphaTauri have hit their limit of drivers of 4, and this week that actually means that this is an awful stat. But now AlphaTauri have now had more drivers this year than they've got points. They've only got 3 points, and they've used 4 drivers. That's
Yuki had a penalty
good.
as well for causing a collision. Liam Lawson finished 13th in the chaos and kerfuffle and the restart and because he was not doing great when the race started. He really kind of came around and loosened up, and I hope this bodes well for him for Monza next week. Like, it's one of those things, get some laps under your belt. And he acquitted himself well. It wasn't like, he was
all
a
he
blue
had was
flagger.
FP3.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. I thought he did super well. Just kind of drove the wheels off it as best he could. So before we jump over to Paul to see what he made of it, we've got to do our King of the Pits versus the Pits. I think I went first last week, Brian. So who's your King of the Pits?
Oh, man. I got to say, I think my King of the Pits is Max. Just for the records, we'll talk about the records. But in a variable weather condition trek, when everyone's expecting you to do this and the weight of the world and your home country is on your shoulders, to deliver the way he did consistently this whole season, but I know it's for this race, I give Max. Max is my king, and the pits, I'm going to go with Mercedes strategy and Ferrari strategy. What, are you joining me? Why'd you make
We've got an exact match. We've got an exact match. I hadn't thrown Ferrari on there. I mean, Ferrari were just going to be there for my now. They're almost just a running joke. But I thought Mercedes really messed up with the tire calls right at the beginning when it was obvious.
We talked about it a little, but I kind of held my powder till now, and you thought the same?
Yeah, 100%. I thought, well, you might have thought with all the Checo beating I was doing, I was going to make him the pits. I mean,
so.
He did what he did, and he's pulled it home in 4th or what have you. But no, I think Mercedes missed a real opportunity this weekend because I thought that car was actually looking quick, and then they messed up their qualifying strategy to mean Hamilton didn't even make Q3, and then they messed up probably the most important time of the race when the rain was coming down, because that was not going to dry out for slicks. And I think Lewis, I heard moan on the radio, wasn't it? It was like, this is not going to dry, guys, we've got to go into. By that time, I think he dropped down to wherever it was, 14th, 15th or something off the back of that.
Yeah, well, and then George with what I thought was the team radio of the day. I was predicted for a podium. Look at me now. What happened? What? What simulation were you looking at? Did you play PlayStation last night? And that's what came up. Sorry, last thing. The reason I added Ferrari, and not just because not having tires ready, that was bad, but it just felt like a lot of their strategy with Charles this weekend was bad, and he even coached them in quali. Did you catch that when he's like, let's do a better job on the timeliness of this and our decision making? I mean, he sounded like just a forlorn, world history teacher telling his students, pay attention to the dates. You got a test tomorrow.
It's funny you say that, because I also thought that he knows that's going out on TV if he does it over the radio. It's going to, because that could have easily been done behind closed doors when they got back into the garage. So, I think he's wanting to put it out there that he must feel super under pressure, because last year it was a potential title chance that just went south around the summer break. This year they've been nowhere near, and I think he's just kind of put that out there as the kind of cover your own backside kind of thing of, it's not me, guys.
He's tied for 6th in the driver standings with George. So, not good. I think he should have sat in that deck chair all day Sunday, too, and watched him there.
I think he should. Now, neither of me or you have listened to Paul. Alpha did not have a great weekend. Should we take a little listen in and see how upbeat he is?
Thank you, Paul.
Hey, guys. Well, literally, I'm watching Max drive around. He's just won, which, I mean, it's not a shock. It's massive respect to get 9 consecutive wins is pretty incredible, and at your home as well. It's just where he is right now. It is pretty impressive. I'm going to speak about the actual race, because, I mean, not a lot happened in that, did it? Let's discuss Friday. I mean, you know my hatred of Fridays, and I find it it's pretty sick, I guess, that, Friday was actually highlighted by a nasty injury to Daniel. And, yeah, look, no blame to Oscar, no blame to Danny Rick, and it looked a weird incident as well. I can't struggle to think how he actually did whack his hands. Some people say the steering wheel turned around. I mean, you see by the footage it clearly didn't. So a strange one for him, but that said, the type of injury, I would be amazed if we saw him before Japan, personally, and even at that. So really sad for him. Great for for Liam. It's just good, full stop. It's feel good. He had a good race. I'm going to go to the race in a bit. It's just started raining again. Shock horror. I will say this. Qualifying was disappointing for us as a team because, again, we had the pace to really do something. So it was just disappointing. As for the race, we always sort of expected there to be some sort of rain. I think that was fairly obvious. And then, the rain at the start, we sort of knew that was coming. It just seems to be every race at the moment we're getting some sort of rain, which is a bit frustrating. And then it was like, I mean, I don't want to talk too much about the team because I'm still a little bit annoyed personally that we didn't come in with Valtteri. It seemed like, going on to intermediates was the only thing you could do in those conditions. And as you saw with Zhou, it really benefited. So a lot of other drivers decided to go against it. So was it right? Was it wrong? I'm always going to say it's wrong because you have the facts. At the time, it's different. And then you saw another Ferrari disaster. Look, let's not get too hung up on that as well. Before, I assure you guys are probably massacring them.
We did.
As a team in that situation, you are literally waiting for the engineers. And the engineers' communication with the driver was to stay out. And then he's decided to come in. And you also have to remember, Ferrari are the second team in the championship order. You have one of the shortest pit lanes in the world. So from the time that Leclerc's decided to come in to when he arrives in the box is probably, I mean, I can't say 5 seconds, but let's say it's 5-6 seconds. So when you see the team running out like that, it always looks like they've made a massive mistake. Now, I have a huge amount of sympathy for that because you're not going to go out into the pit box unless you actually know. One of those, it's sad. They've been off all weekend again. Ferrari's strange one. They had damage to the car, so it's one of those things. The rain at the end, we have the forecast. You can see it coming. I mean, it was huge. It had to be red flagged. There's no two ways about that. But Ocon he was on the radio saying he thought it was a bad decision. I actually thought it was a great decision. I was like speaking to obviously my little crew, and I was sort of like, just box and put full wets on. And it's literally it's those sort of decisions that will go for you or against you. You always sort of know it's going to be a red flag or a safety car or a situation where the race is never going to continue with that much rain. So by putting full wets on, even though you might think you'd lose out, I actually disagree. I don't think you do lose out. I think you're always going to get a red flag, and it's a really good gamble. And actually, if the race would have gone on another lap,
2 laps,
I think Ocon would have made up 5, 6, 7 places, really. I think he could have really benefited. Because then, of course, red flag, come in, stick your blinkers on. So, good gamble. I understand his frustration. But what a race. Max dominates again. Great for Fernando to be second. We love seeing that. Pierre Gasly third. It's just great to see a bit of a mix-up. Even qualifying yesterday, 6 cars in the top 6. Take Max away. And this is an obvious statement. Take Max away. We have one hell of a season if you look behind Max Verstappen. And I think, while everyone thinks it's boring, I understand that. I'm not stupid. But at the same time, the racing is actually quite good behind. Max is just in a league of his own, and massive congrats on that record. That's pretty impressive. Great to be back. I won't lie, I'm wet. Not with excitement, more so I had to get on the scooter and take some items to Veltri in the red flag, including 2 bananas and some flapjacks as a snack, as well as some nice dry clothing, which now I've got to get into and somehow try and make a flight in a few hours that realistically I've got no chance. So for me, 2 options. I either miss a flight and sit at the airport, or I head into Amsterdam and have a look what that city has to offer. I've heard rumours, don't want to comment on them. Until next time, goodbye.
So 2 things that we have to hit.
Legendary, Paul.
So good, Paul. First of all, I screwed up. I should have played this up front. Don't edit it, Rob. We're just playing it here this time. It'll be his outro
I was going to
music.
edit it.
That's the way we close this week.
Yeah, I would have edited all that in, and you would never have known that you forgot to play it.
No, we used it. I purposely wanted it as an outro. 2
okay.
bananas and some flapjacks. That is that'll be the name of my fantasy football team this year. 2 bananas and some flapjacks. Oh man, I love the behind the scenes stuff. But Paul, that was really great analysis. You know what? I know we hit it. We did talk about Ferrari. I think we all agreed about the way that the wheels came off Max's greatness. The cars, though, the battles behind, which we all, the 3 of us, obviously enjoyed. And yeah, the Esteban on the full wets. We briefly said that. You asked, did anyone go full wets? I said, yeah, it was Ocon, and he was complaining about it. But it seemed like a good gamble, and I think Paul's right. Had it gone 1 or 2 more laps, I think he could have made up some moves, some positions there, because he was the only person out on the right tires at the right time. It was the one chance for the wet tires to shine. One person had them, and they red flagged it before they could. They knew. Yep. They knew Pirelli was going to be excited about it, so they cut short.
Right. Well, thank you, Paul. It's so good to hear a review from him. I'm just wondering what state he's going to be in tomorrow if he's going into Amsterdam. But oh boy, just make sure you finish your drink. Anyway, I think you've got a bumper edition of Sap Stats, haven't you? Which tune are you going for this time?
I don't know. I think I'm going to go with one of the listener specials. Love it. This is the Dutch GP edition. I am super excited. I have borrowed heavily from Sean Kelly. Normally I don't do that, but it was kind of a busy day, so I will add some of my own throughout. First off, it was the first Dutch GP to ever be red flagged. You already hit this, and Paul did too. Verstappen's 9th consecutive win, we heard this on the TV about 100 times, tied the Formula One championship record held by Seb, also with Red Bull. I did see a stat somewhere that said Ascari also had 9 over a couple seasons, counting all the races, but I couldn't validate that, so we'll just go with the mainstream one about tying Seb. It was the 12th consecutive time Verstappen has won when starting from pole. We did a pole position analysis on this here pokey little podcast last week. That ties Michael Schumacher's record set between 2003 and 2004. That's pretty impressive. His 11th win of the season surpasses his total in his 2021 title season. And interestingly, it matches the most Lewis ever scored in a season. And there's a lot of racing left. Yeah, exactly. So when we talk about dominance, let's give Max the priority he deserves. He remains unbeaten at Zandvoort in his lifetime, 3 for 3. And then we'll move off of Max and his greatness. We'll talk a little bit about P2 today. Fernando secured his 7th podium of the year of the, 13 races?
Yeah, Fernando.
Yeah, he extended his gap over Lewis in 3rd place in the championship. They were separated by only 1 point before today. And the P2 for Alonso breaks Michael Schumacher's F1 record for the longest, and they said this on the TV, between the longest interval between first and last career podium. And Alonso's still extending that timeline. 7,399 days between Malaysia 2003 and now. That's a long-ass time.
Yeah, and he's no doubt going to extend that further as well.
Yeah, with the upgrades that are working and his ability.
Yeah.
And so with his P2 in the fastest lap, Alonso now scored more points for Aston Martin in the first 13 races of this year, 168 points, than he did his entire time at Alpine, 162 points.
2 seasons worth, isn't it?
Yeah, 2 seasons. Aston Martin finished on the podium at Zandvoort for the first time 64 years after making their F1 debut on this track with Roy Salvadori and none other than Carroll Shelby. Again, that was on the TV, and I thought that was a cool stat. Pierre's P3 for Alpine, and you said this was his first podium since Azerbaijan in 21. Pierre had been pointless in the 3 previous Grand Prix.
It's a bit harsh.
I'm going to bring that up again in the fantasy section because some of us have been riding the Pierre Gasman and just got off it today mistakenly. Hamilton took 6th for Mercedes. We've talked about his consistency after every race. He has still only finished outside the top 6 once this year in 13 races, and it was 8th in Austria. That's amazing. He's been in the top 6 every time.
It is. It's not where he wants to be, but it is a good start. Yeah.
I mean, his teammate George can't say the same thing, not even close.
True.
With P7 for McLaren, Lando finished in the same position for the 2nd consecutive race. Now, I have to do a deep dive here, and I don't think this person listens, but if Jeff P is listening, this is really for you, but for Rob and I as well, because we love this stat. I went a little crazy here. So 2 7s in a row for Lando. In Lando's career, he has finished 7th more than any other position by a mile. Lando has finished 7th in his career 14 times. The next closest position is 8th, which he's finished 9 times. That's a 5-race gap. That's huge. And in 2022, this came, like, we noticed this, right? We talked a lot about this on the pod, and you and I in meetings that were fake meetings so we could talk about the races. It became clear he loved 7th. He was 7th in the championship in 2022. He finished exactly how many races in 2022 in 7th place? Rob, do you want to guess?
Well, if it's 14 in his career, he couldn't have done all of those last year, so we'll say 8. 7.
No.
We'll say 7.
Good.
7
I was hoping you. I was trying to bait you into saying 7 because the answer is actually 6.
Oh, come off it.
I know. I wish I'd had the game show. Was the answer 7? Nope. The answer is 6. But anyway, Lando loves
With all that
7.
bait, we're going to need a bigger boat. But anyway, come on.
Taking P8 for Williams, Alex secured his 3rd top 8 finish in the last 6 races. And it's worth noting Max has 339 points on the season. Checo in 2nd with 201. That's 138 excess points. It would put Max in 5th still. But he's now on the heels of Fernando with 168 and Lewis in 4th with 156. So he's trying to lap everybody in the season if he can, and he still would be in 2nd place in the Constructors because Merck only has 255 total. So wraps up the stats. Rob, did I do an all right job finding some stuff and borrowing from Sean?
Great stats. Yeah, 100%. Okay, right. Fantasy then. As you mentioned, you made a bit of a mistake this week, didn't you?
A huge one. I substituted Alex in for Pierre, and as I said, I'm the conductor on the Alex Albon hype train. Choo-choo, all aboard. Been there for a while. Who cannot love Alex? He is great. No. But Pierre scored 39 points this week, and Alex had 17. Crap. So this week, I was 15th. I looked. You were right behind me. I had 371 points. You had 368 or 69. You were like 1 or 2 or 3 points.
There was a huge number of places between the...
Yes.
2 points behind you. Yeah, I was like about 20 places behind you, which is insane. But
we were very close. And had I had the 22 points if I'd forgotten to put Alex in for Pierre, I'd have been in the a little higher up as well. But either way, we were very close. This week at the Dutch GP, we were led by Stop Inventing Motorsports, 457 points. I'm assuming there were some chips there. Busy Bee Racing, JP, good job, your home GP, 407 points. Supermax, I got it right this time. Apologies for hosing that up so many other times, my Canadian friend. But in 3rd, Supermax, 393, followed by There Can Only Be One, No Mikey No, 61, Bono, My Tires Are Dead, it's an E. I was going to say it's still not spelled right, but I'm sorry. Little Seal Racing, Bayou Piastri, I like that one, F1 Wings Team, and Darshan Racing F1. So the top 3 for the season at this point, Much Mistaken, FPL Instinctive, and Michael Kronje 16. Last 2 notes. We'll be fast here on this. Last call, first half T-shirt, Much Mistaken. We're writing off the liability this week, meaning it's coming off the books. If you don't respond with a picture of your team so we know it's you before next weekend, that is gone. And briefly on Survivor, we lost a handful of teams, actually about 20% of the teams, some to the DNF bug. I'll give Rob a minute to talk about it because we lost Rob. He had Logan as his loser. And some
lose,
made
but because of your stupid rule. Anyway,
Yes.
carry on.
Some because of picks that weren't great. I'm looking at you on the Discord, Nimrod. He had Lance over Alex. It's rough. A lot of people had Fernando over people, so either Lance or Kevin. We saw a lot of Maxes and some Landos as winners. Those all paid out. So good job to everybody. We will continue it if you're still alive, and you know if you are. Submit your picks before quali.
Yeah, I'll get mine in next week because I'm still in. Because I'm not adhering to the DNF rule. It's a stupid rule.
Please feel free to submit.
No,
it'll save me some time entering it into the Excel because I won't.
No, it's fine. It's fine. Right, but as we say, next week, Monza, back to back, we will be heading to the Temple of Speed. 53 laps of 3.6 miles where you are at full throttle for 80% of the lap.
Yes.
That's a lot of lap time with your foot firmly nailed to the floor.
Yes.
I didn't realize this one. It's been around for over 100 years. They broke ground in early 1922 and opened later that year. So, yeah, 101 years at Monza. That's insane.
Well, the old banking that they show that now has like weeds and stuff growing through it looks scary.
Yeah, I mean, this is probably an incorrect stat, but it looks like from when I pull these kind of things together as we do the previews, when I look down the number of iterations this track has had, it's got to be right up there with, I imagine, some of the really big long ones like Spa and Nürburgring and Hockenheim that went through lots of renovations. They kind of cut down their size. This one, for quite a small track, has been through a gazillion different incarnations. It started off as, like you say, high banked corners oval, and then it became a real racetrack rather than just an oval. And yeah, it's insane. I've got to love it. We see a lot of accidents at turn one, because you are flat out, especially even from the start, like even from lights out, you do actually build up a heck of a lot of speed, and then the first corner is a chicane that you take at like 50 miles an hour, which sounds quick in your road car when you're going down to the grocery store, but ain't fast for an F1 car.
No, and in a road car, you're not taking that at more than 10.
True. I mean, that is a beast of a chicane. And also, one of the things we'll probably see is a lot of people wandering wide on corners because understeer is a thing here, because people run their wings so narrow,
Skinny.
whatever you want to call it, skinny, to maximize speed. That means you lose your downforce, which means you get a very oversteery car by design, which it'd be interesting to see. I mean, Max has done well here. We'll come to the previous stats in a bit, but Max likes the front to be twitchy, right? He likes the nose pointing in. He likes a little bit of oversteer, which is pretty difficult to pull off, I think, on a low downforce track, but we shall see. What else we got before we look at repeat winners and stuff? Right, lap record on the current layout, and again, these don't tend to be held for as long, but 2004, Rubens Barrichello, 1 minute 21.046.
Wow.
That seems wrong. I checked it a couple of times. If I have got it wrong and everyone wants to lay into me online, that's fine. But
did I set that lap on the PlayStation? Because I remember playing this a ton with Rubens at Monza back then. I don't remember if that was me or him who set the 121.
Yeah. I did a little bit of manipulation here, because when I went on to look at the repeat winners for drivers and constructors, they're giving it all time. And because this track's been running since the 20s, I decided to stay true to F1 Championship, and I discounted and manually took away wins for people that had won anything pre-1950, okay, before you start calling me that the stats are wrong. So repeat winners, Shuey and Hamilton at 5, 4 for PK, 3, we've got Fangio, Moss, Peterson, Prost, Barrichello, and Vettel. 2, we've got like a gazillion of them. We've got Phil Hill, Ascari, Surtees, Stewart, Regonzoni, Lauda, Senna, and well, whatever. Lauda, Senna, Damon Hill, Montoya. And then finally, we actually pick up another current driver. Obviously, I mentioned Hamilton at the beginning. We get Alonso in at 2.
Awesome.
Yeah, so not really a lot of current drivers have got repeat wins here. Constructors, whenever we look at these things for tracks that have been around forever, it pains me because the repeat constructor is always Ferrari, because they've been around forever. 19 wins, McLaren 11, Merc 7, Williams 6, Lotus 5, BRM, Brabham, and Red Bull 3, Maserati, Van Wall, and Renault. Never heard of Van Wall.
I've seen the name. I don't know enough about it. We got to do a Vale's Tales about Van Wall.
They've got 2.
They always were known for their low downforce setup, apparently. Well, Monza's low downforce, and I haven't seen Van Wall in a lot of other places. So if you're going to make your name somewhere, they must have been really slippery.
Okay, fair enough. 5 different winners in the last 5 years. So we go back 5 years. We've had Hamilton, Charles, Gasly, Danny Rick, if you remember the Danny Rick win.
Love that one.
And then last year, Max. So, yeah, do you remember much about last year's race?
Just Max winning because it was the first time he'd ever won there. And if I have that right.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yep.
And so I remember he was doing well, and the question was, could he get off the Schneid? And I remember the years prior when he went into the gravel a couple times, and he always blamed other people. Oh, they forced me off, and then he was stuck spinning the wheels. And yeah, I'm excited to see this. And also this was the De Vries race where he finished 9th, sitting in for Williams.
Yeah.
And so on the strength of that, he got a seat. Now, here's the challenge I have, right? So, like, the AlphaTauri is not as quick in a straight line as the Williams was last year and is now. So I don't foresee Liam Lawson with points, but like I said before, I'm willing to go out on a limb and say Logan Sargent will have a point or more in the race next week at Monza, which is a little bit of F1 crap, but the Williams is quick. I feel like Logan's coming into his own, and I'm optimistic. And last thing I'll say about this really quickly is I love quali here. There are 2 races where I kind of put quali ahead of the race sometimes, not always at Monza, but sometimes. It's Monaco and it's Monza. Monaco because of the risk, the walls. The race is boring. The quali is great. It is precision. It is who gets closest to the line. You don't know what's going to happen until the very end of every session. It's always great. Monza is similar that it's precision. Who can run the cleanest, most perfect line and lap? It's big enough where usually you aren't quite as bunched up like you are at Hungary or Zandvoort. I mean, yes, you still get traffic coming around the Parabolica as they're getting ready to go on the last laps or whatever it's called now, Curva Grande or something. And so I'm excited to see this. I love quali at Monza. I enjoy the race there just because it's in Italy. It's a historic track, and it's fun to watch. It's not, for me, always a banger of a race, but I always tune in and enjoy it. It has me at hello.
I got high hopes this year because last year Aston Martin, both cars retired through engine issues. This year I'm looking at what looks like a fast Aston now with the upgrades. We've got McLaren looking feisty again. Like you say, Williams are a quick car. Alpine showed some pace today with Gasly's, and they're a slippery car as well. So we've got a lot of cars that have got a lot of speed. Do I see anything other than Max driving off into the distance? I don't know.
No, he's going to win by 25, 30 seconds.
I want to see it end properly this year. Last year was the Danny Rick oil leak that we finished behind the safety car, which is, while everyone kind of agreed that was technically the right decision because it seems to take the marshals forever to get the car off the track, it's a damp squib to finish behind the safety car. Yeah. So let's finish off with our predictions. I went first with my stupid Max retirement last week, Brian, so you can go first this time.
Well, Max is going to win, and like I said, it'll be by 20-plus seconds. That he wins by because his car is fast. And for anyone who's newer to F1, and Rob mentioned this, but please take a look at how skinny the rear wings are. Even with DRS closed, they are tiny because you want so little downforce. It's fun. Like, it's interesting. You watch them kind of like, is that legal? That thing's like tilted at such an angle you can barely even read the sponsor name. And then when they open DRS, it's like non-existent. So I always enjoy looking at the skinny rear wings. But yeah, I got Max motoring off into the sunset. It's a fast car. He's an incredibly precise, accurate driver. He does not get distracted or make mistakes. He takes this thing home. And then, boy, it's hard. I'm going to write off Ferrari because I don't think they're high speed enough. And the way things are going, the Tifosi will be throwing, San Marzano or whatever they're called, tomatoes at him. And so I'm going to say Lando. I'm going to say Lando in the McLaren. I think it's fast. And I'll go third with Fernando in the Aston.
Okay. I'm not gonna predict the demise of Max this week like I did last week. I'm with you. I might even push it further and say he could be 30 seconds clear of the field. But I think Aston showed something today. I'm saying that Alonso gets to extend that gap between podiums and finishes second. And I think I don't think Lando's going to nail. Lando will be in seventh. And I think that coming in third. Where am I going with this, Brian?
I don't know.
But... I'm gonna go out there. I'm gonna say Piastri's going to throw it up there.
Oh wow, interesting. Okay, it's a call. You know what? And I don't think that's a bad call at all. There's a good chance. Now, are you with me, Logan, in a point situation, one or more, or am I way out here in left field?
If he can just seem to avoid these this bad luck streak, like today with the hydraulics going. And I mean, it is a fast circuit. I don't think we should get rain. We don't tend to get rain there at this time of year. Although somebody will probably show me a wet race that we've had every year for the last 10 years.
Exactly.
But in my head, it feels like this is a dry race. I just worry that, like you say, there's a lot of precision around a lot of these fast corners. Will he bin it again? As long as he stay away from stupid mistakes, yes, I think that Williams has probably got enough pace for him to put it up there.
I'm it's rare when I pick someone who's not one of my favorite drivers to cheer for, but I'm cheering for Logan, and I really hope he gets a point. So we'll see.
I hope he does, and I'm going to be really interested to see what Lawson does as well. This one's all about speed. It's all about tires. I'm also going to be interested to see where Checo. I mean, look, neither of us have put Checo on the podium.
No.
Yet he's got the same rocket ship. So
He wasn't even in my selection set, if I'm being honest. I didn't even think of Checo. I thought of Max, and then I eliminated the constructors who were slow, and I picked from the ones who were faster, and I picked the drivers I thought would do it. Checo did not make my list. I'm sorry, man. My love of Checo, it's taking a beating.
No, it feels really bad, but it's just the way it is at the moment. He doesn't seem to catch a break. The team aren't making the calls, as we had our little rant about here. They're obviously got no confidence that he can pull things off. So, and they don't care. I mean, just to end on a real down here, they know that Max has got the title, both titles sewn up by himself.
And he makes the team the money. So on that, I'm going to undercut you and close out the episode. Everybody, thanks so much for listening. We are super happy that you were with us and that F1's back. We cannot wait for Monza next weekend. Tune in as we review Monza. Talk to you all soon.